Hey everybody, what's up? Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel. Today is day number 5 of our year-end awards. It is the last negative one that we're doing. We're taking a look at the top 5 worst albums of 2020. Before we get started though, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You will always get the 30-second Song of the Day feature from bands in the scene that are rather prominent or just upcoming and emerging. So you'll get a new song every single day. It will help expand your musical horizon, get to know what's coming up and what's most prominent. We also post a lot on those pages as well, asking you certain questions, notifying you anytime anything comes out on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, whatever it might be. And on Instagram, we also go live every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central to talk to you guys for an hour and just see whatever happens. We also post IGTV videos every single Tuesday night. And it's behind the scenes look at what is happening here. Please also subscribe to the YouTube channel because not only do you get the rest of the year-end award that still have to come out, you will also be notified any other time we make a video, which usually comes out every single Wednesday night. We do videos such as the Kevin Figures Out series, where I try and figure out if I like certain bands or not that I'm not that well versed in the scene today. We do our album reviews. We do our videos about emerging bands in the scene today, such as bands that are part of Italian metalcore, our favorites in the emerging band scenes in today, the top scene bands that are in the scene today that are fronted by women, and also a bunch of top 10 lists. So please make sure you watch those because they're fantastic. And this is also where the Chord Progression podcast lives. It is our very own podcast where we are interviewing all the emerging bands in the scene today. And we have had a lot of great episodes so far, especially in the past couple of weeks with bands like The Dev, Kim Collapse, and the one we did with GFM, aka Gold Frankenstein. My God, was that one fun. So go check that one out. You can find that podcast here on YouTube, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or iHeart Radio. Links in the description below for everything. So like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Let's get to it. Before we get started, a little bit of a background on this one. Yes, it is the worst album of the year pick, and that means that these are going to be the worst albums that we thought were coming from 2020. We do understand, though, that if you like these albums, that is totally okay. Then take our picks with a grain of salt as you will. You'll get a different perspective on why we really don't care for these albums. You may have, and last year we saw that come out with our number 1 pick. And the conversation that we had with a lot of the fans of that band was very constructive. We learned why they liked the album so much, why they connected with it so much. So we gained respect for them there, and they gained respect for us because we were willing to listen and really willing to understand what they were saying. We all have different musical opinions, so these are our opinions. So remember, if you disagree, again, please take it with a grain of salt. Looking at our past picks, number 2018, yeah, we picked America by 30 Seconds to Mars to be our worst album of the year. One of my favorite bands of all time. I thought put out an absolute stinker of an album compared to their more emo, post-hardcore, and alt-rock style from the late 2000s, going with something a lot more pop-oriented, a lot more synthetic, and a lot less guitar work. So it really did not stand out to me. And in 2019, we went with Neo Theater by AJR. It just felt like it lacked a lot of substance and a lot of things we're talking about from the perspective of the songwriter and the song singers looking at other people and talking about their perspectives. It felt like there's a lot of disingenuousness into their sound. Plus, they were considered a rock album, so I can include in there. That was when we had a lot of positive feedback on in terms of people saying, hey, we disagree with you, and then creating that conversation. So enough of that, let's go. Coming number 5, we have our pick for the most disappointing album of 2020, and that is Father of All by Green Day. So why is this on the list? And Green Day ended up saying that they wanted to bring back the balls to punk rock on this album, and they're very well capable of doing that because we saw that happen with American Idiot back in 2004, and even Anti-Flag in 2020 with their album 2020 Vision that came out a couple weeks before Father of All really did that. But Father of All, no, there were no balls on this album. We were all expecting them to hit maybe not the same sound, but hit the same emotions that they did in 2004, and it really didn't do that, and especially really related to a lot of the themes that they were talking about on this album. I was expecting to go with something a lot more political, a lot more oriented, and more frontward facing. However, the problem was they stuck with a lot of different themes that you could really relate to back to high school, like they really focused in on Dookie, and those themes really lacked a lot of substance. Take a look at a song like Maybe on the Roof, where they're talking about fear of getting a date, or Sugar You talking about not wanting to go to a party but wanting to go there anyway because you're going to want to hook up with someone that's there. So there's really a lot of just this kind of bubblegum poppy themes in there. Plus, you even take a look at I Was a Teenager, and they're talking about puberty. It's like, come on, guys, can we just get to grow up here like we did with American Idiot? And then take a look at the titular song Fatherball. Oh dear Lord. To me, this reminded me of a male version of Rebel Just for Kicks by Portugal the Man, especially with the tone of vocals that Billy Joe Armstrong went with on this song. It really didn't strike me as very good. There are also a good amount of spots of blandness on this album. What I mean by that is just, again, the fact they said there was going to be balls there, and these just kind of reminded me of just like some normal songs that Green Day would write as a filler song in their discography. Really kind of just set this up for not that great success. Take a look again at I Was a Teenager. They're talking about going through puberty yet giving it very little substance over the course of a 3-minute song. Take the Money and Crawl. There's potential to blast the system with many people living paycheck to paycheck on this earth, especially with what happened with the pandemic. Though this is pre-pandemic, but there was a great opportunity here because people were living paycheck to paycheck a lot right before that happened. And it just created a monotone sound overall, and then you listen to Oh Yeah, and the theme fits, but the pop music make this song sound very run-of-the-mill. So overall, I was definitely disappointed with this one and really let down by it because I was expecting something a lot more heavy, a lot more overt, a lot more in your face like they did on American Idiot to really bring back the balls to punk rock. I know they said that going after Trump and the Trump administration would have been too easy, which I do agree with. However, they really could have upped the energy on a lot of these and maybe taken on some more social structures that really could have taken this full force. If you want to see some punk rock that really brought back balls in 2020, Anti-Flag and the New York punk band Rebelmatic really hit home on this one. Coming in number 4, we have Mother by the band in this moment. Now, I know a lot of the Mother Maria fans are probably going to be at their keyboards going nuts on me for this one, so please hear me out before you give me your opinion. And why I really didn't like this album was because there was a consistent theme, especially from Ritual, that I was hoping they would not continue on with Mother, and they absolutely did. And that was they really focused in heavily on Maria Brink's unique vocal style as the main point, so much so that the instrumentation was very lacking in that department to really make sure that Maria Brink's vocals were the focal point and shine through almost every single song. And that made this album feel incredibly bland because there was no dynamic instrumentation falling behind it. And I have heard them do that in the past with songs like Hunting Grounds, Big Bad Wolf, Blood, of course, Chord. And that really helps bring out the dynamics of the sound. When you listen to Mother, for the majority of it, yes, Maria Brink's vocals are going to be the focal point, but they're such the focal point that everything else is drowned out, and this song on these albums just seem really bland for in this moment. It's a continuation of what Ritual was, but even more so down the line. Take a look at songs like Legacy, Mother, and God Is She. You're going to really see this on this one. In this one, I went with 3 covers on this album, and that really got me nervous. I'm like, 3 covers, that is intense. Looking at the cover of Into Dust, I thought this really fit the band's style. However, again, the lack of instrumentation, the minimalistic style of it, and really focusing on Maria Brink's vocals made this single and this cover sound really bland. I wish they would have kept it as like a single release and just released it like sometime later in 2020. It would have worked much better. They also covered Fly Like an Eagle by the Steve Miller Band, and I actually enjoyed this cover, especially live when I saw it when they opened up for Disturbed in 2019. I thought it worked really well live, but on the album, it just doesn't have the same power, so I thought it could have been left off. We Will Rock You, covering the Queen song, oh boy. And the reason why I thought this was one of the worst songs of the year was because when you're trying to mimic the style of Queen on a cover, it is incredibly hard, do not get me wrong, so I applaud them for at least trying. However, when they really implemented this more gothic style to it, it just doesn't match up with the overall feel, and it just really comes out as odd and just doesn't mix. And then Maria Brink's vocals really, again, being the prominent focal point at this part, oh dear Lord, it just again creates that overall just overarching Maria Brink power that just doesn't stand out because everything else is just so focused around her vocals. There were 2 features on this one with Taylor Momsen, the Pretty Reckless, who I thought did an okay job, wasn't that standoutish. Lizzie Hale's part, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing the Hailstorm cover We Will Rock You because her rock sound I think could really do well as a cover on this as a whole thing. Lastly, this album was supposed to come out in summer of 2019, but it was delayed until March of 2020. And whenever I see an album delay, I'm always thinking, okay, there might be some problems here, and if you have more time, I'm expected to be better than what is anticipated. And this was a real letdown on that part, so this is why this also comes up here. And again, a lot of it was the fact that Maria Brink's vocals were the prominent part on this, and again, when you just remove a lot of the instrumentation and keep it very minimalistic to enhance that, it comes across as rather bland to me instead of hearing songs like Whore, Blood, Big Bad Wolf. So overall, again, it was just majorly the focus on Maria Brink's vocals as the center point on this album versus mixing in more instrumentation in there. Just really gave this album a really bland feel and just really let us down. It came in at number 2 on our most disappointing list and comes at number 4 on our worst of the year. Coming in number 3, we have Like a House on Fire by Asking Alexandria, and I have a feeling a lot of you guys knew that this was going to be coming here, and if you're a fan of their newer sound, do not get me wrong, I'm totally okay with that. Just listen to hear what I have to say about why I wasn't a fan of the album, why I thought it was one of the worst of the year, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it as well. My first thing I didn't like about this album was just the structure of all these songs was incredibly monotonous and almost the same. When they really vocalized songs, especially taking a look at the singles like House on Fire, Anti-Socialist, The Violence, and many of the deep cuts as well, what they did was they opened up the verses with very minimal instrumentation and they started to build it up as it went along. So when you got to the pre-chorus and the chorus, it was a lot more prominent. And again, this is a very classic thing a lot of bands work with, and I do understand it. But when you do it on almost every single song, it does get tiresome, and it just kind of got me to the point where I get like 8 or 9 songs in this album, I'm just like, again, Bueller. One thing I liked about this album was the fact that the transitions were almost all the same, and let me explain. What they did with a lot of these transitions was as they were building up into the pre-chorus by adding the instrumentation and slowly building you up so that you get to the chorus and pop more, a lot of times the transitions dipped right away and then hit you with the chorus. A really big thing in pop music to try and add to that chorus and make it pop in terms of contrast. But in my opinion, this didn't work out well for 2 reasons. One is because they did this on almost every single song. So when you hear that over and over and over again, it's gonna be monotonous and it's really gonna stand out as a not the best quality. And the second part of it is they failed to really make that chorus contrast against the transition against the intro and the verses really hard. Take a look at songs like Anti-Socialist and Give You Up. You're really going to feel this here. The last thing I couldn't understand about this album was there was a total removal of just this intensity and sort of violent feel to it that Asking Alexandria has had in the past. Now, I did listen to some interviews they made before this album and why they went with a softer sound that's a little bit more accessible in terms of the rock variety, and it's because they're in a different place in their life and they don't associate well with the harder sounds and the harder styles that they worked on in the late 2000s, early 2010s. So this is more in line with how they're feeling and more in line with their lives at this moment. And I totally do understand that, don't get me wrong. However, taking a look at their self-titled, which came out in 2017, take a look at a song like Into the Fire as a perfect example where it takes out a majority of the bounce they wanted to remove, but the song still hits hard and hits you heavy in the face. And most of the songs here take out that roughness and that rawness, and it puts more of a like melodic and just more melodramatic tone at the same time. And I get the band is in a different spot, but it just seems like this really came out bland. So overall, were there things I liked on this album? Very seldom. I thought the drumming was actually pretty good on this. And one thing I will say about Asking Alexandria is if this is the type of music they want to make, I don't want them to stop making the music that they want to make, because I'd rather have Asking Alexandria continue to make music and be happy than to make an album that we all really want and then hate it and then never play again. I would rather have them be happy. So if they want to keep making music and this is the way they're going to do it, okay. We all the same, yeah. Okay, number 2 worst album on the list for us this year is Say Nothing by Theory of a Dead Man. And why do we pick this one as our number 2 album? Well, Tyler Connolly, lead singer, said this was going to be the band's scariest album as they were tackling his catharsis views on the world. And scariest? No. Most trigger happy in terms of getting triggered? Oh yeah. The band does end up looking at a lot of different socioeconomic, different political styles, different societal things that they really want to tackle in this album. So I do give them credit for trying to take a look and go deep in those. But I don't think they really hit well on any of these at all. Take a look at a song like White Boy, for instance, where it's the perfect example of this, where instead of being something that's more talkative and something that's more thought-provoking, it's just something more triggering. And the way I look at it is it starts out with news clips from the Charlotte, South Carolina church shooting by Dylan Roof, and I think this is intently done because it gets people triggered into getting emotional about both racial problems and mass shootings here in America. This is something to profile the song in the public eye, but I am not a fan of the song at all because of the entirely disingenuous sound that it has. The sound is both soft rock and a mix of overproduced pop rock, so think Imagine Dragons on this one. And this really gives the song a producer and record company's like influence feel to it, and vocals are just downright bad as they show no emotion. Don't get me wrong, there are bands that really do tackle these emotions and really do it with a lot of power, with a lot of vigor. This was not it. And when you take a look at some examples, take a look at Motionless in White with talking about mass shootings with thoughts and prayers, and any sort of race relation. Take a look at Christian Nationalist by Anti-Flag, which came out in 2020. They really do hit the nail on the head with those, with the intensity and with the more thought-provoking lyrics, but man, this one did not work out as well. Another song that really shows this is the song Ted Bundy, where using Ted Bundy due to his serial killer notoriety and the fascination with the public of the serial killer documentaries and serial killer podcasts coming out, plus they came out with a Ted Bundy movie in 2020. Yeah, it just really seemed like a good way for them to just capitalize on that, which I do understand. But the lyrics and instrumentation are just not good at all on this one. The drumming has little to no change throughout the song whatsoever. It's kind of like a war drum in a way, just trying to keep the beat in the margin. It kind of gives you headaches, and the lyrics are just... oh boy, let's take a look at some of these. Baby, you know that I love you to death, but I'm never gonna see you again. I mean, come on, really? Come on, Tyler. The song, It's All Good, is a really interesting choice to put at the end, so I do like its placement, but the sound just really doesn't work out overall, and it really kind of let me down. Album takes this whole time focusing on socioeconomic and political and psychological issues throughout the whole entire thing, and how do you name an album with this overall country music feel meets a Creedence Clearwater Revival intro that really makes no sense, saying, oh, it's all good, baby, what are you going for? You spent the whole album talking about all these different problems. You spent the whole album taking a look at a catharsis of what's going on in America today. You took a whole look at this. You really tried to deconstruct this, and then you end kind of with, it's all good. Huh? So overall, I thought this album was pretty poorly done, and this was something that was definitely going to be high up on the list from the beginning of the year. Even Luke from Rock picked it as his #1 worst album of the year for 2020. But why is it #2 and not #1? Well, there are two major reasons. One is the song Theory of Violence actually does a very good job at going through the emotions of being jaded due to domestic violence and then making the change and then finally figuring out who you are amongst yourself and becoming a more free person. Even the music video does a great job of this, and I will give credit where credit is due on that one. And the other thing is, I actually was able to get through this album once or twice and not really have like a moment where I was like, oh god, I gotta turn this off. So it can't be #1, because there was one that is. Before I give you my overall pick for the worst album of 2020, you the fans had a chance to vote, and you picked... well then. Should I be surprised or should I not be surprised? That's your call. Now it's time for #1, and of course it is Shadow Work by Trapt. Now, one thing I want to make clear is I'm going to disconsider any sort of emotions or feelings regarding Chris Brown's political affiliations, political opinions, and his rant on social media over the course of 2020. And I want to say that because I feel like there might be a lot of people that really hate this album just based off of that fact and really didn't even listen to it, or may have just listened to it with a much more negative connotation because of that. While I do understand that, I want to take a look at the music itself specifically, and the politics might end up in there a little bit, but it won't end up in something where this is going to be a full-on thing where that affected this album. So let's take a look at really why it's the worst of the year. So why is Trapt's album the worst of the year? And there was just a generic pop sound that was really blended into all this. And when I'm thinking of Trapt, I'm thinking of the song Headstrong, which came out in the early 2000s, so I'm expecting some sort of a heaviness to it, especially if they're going to create something that's a little bit more bland. But they end up going with a lot of different pop elements in there that really made this feel like a bubblegum pop kind of album mixed with a rock album that just really came across as super soft, super lazy in a way, and just really didn't hit on any levels whatsoever. take a look at the song Tell Me How You Really Feel, which was our worst song of the year here in 2020. It has this electronic pop feel that feels like Imagine Dragons is trying to go more with this like 80s pop style that the Wham Christmas song Last Christmas had, and it just is so overproduced that there's like no emotion in there whatsoever. It really doesn't sound good at all to me. And then they also put in this like more country rock kind of vibe in the songs as well, like Turn Around and Let Me Down Slowly, and going with more of that country rock sound does make sense for what the band is going for, so don't get me wrong. But when they go with more of that somber tone on these songs, as does much of this album, everything ends up running really together and it takes away from any substance that's on this album whatsoever. One other thing I remember about this album was I thought with a couple of these songs I have heard them in the past, so let's use the heavily influenced route on this one. When I listened to Tell Me How You Really Feel, again with that synth, I got that feel of the 80s song Last Christmas by Wham! But the way the verses in the pre-chorus was constructed, the first thing that came to my head was, did they take Maroon 5 Sugar and just put it in their own words like kids did in high school when it came to, okay, fine, didn't research something, but yeah, just put in your own words instead. So they took any article off the internet and just basically rewrote it in the same style, but just for themselves. And I was like, man, this really does sound interesting. But take a listen to the pre-chorus of Sugar and listen to the pre-chorus of Tell Me How You Really Feel, and just the way that the vocal pattern is constructed along with the synth sound, you're really gonna feel it on this one, trust me. Another one of those songs where it's like the put it in your own word style is Far Enough Away, and this reminded me so much of Broken Bones by Rev Theory that I just was kind of blown away by it, because the heavier acoustic guitar and the overall sound and flow that the song takes is so much of inspiration on Rev Theory on this one that it was like, again, put it in your own words kind of style. When you take out that much inspiration from a different band, the music just comes out really uninspired and kind of blah. So when I heard this, I just could not get my head wrapped around the fact that these were different songs. Also, there were some pretty cringy lyrics in this one. I gotta take a look at Tell Me How You Really Feel, where it's just Chris talking, tell me how you really feel. It's kind of like that I'm working hard in a relationship, but I don't know how she feels, so I'm just like begging that you tell me how you feel. Kind of simping in a way, and it just kind of really just brought me down like, man, you're really kind of getting desperate on this one. And then, of course, I want to want what I want. Man, you're just like whining the whole entire time with this one, like, I want to want what I want. Dude, you have free will, just want it. You don't have to just complain about it so much. It really came off as just cringy and bland and just blah. But where the politics come in on this one is the fact that this album had absolutely no bite to it. And looking at Chris on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, now all the Trapt accounts are either deleted or suspended. The fact of the matter is a lot of those political rants that he went on, he did go after a lot of people as well. So I was expecting this album to have some sort of a bite to it, some sort of an energy to it, some sort of a rawness to it. The whole entire time it just felt like he was complaining. I'm just like, dude, this makes no sense to me. It just came across as this like overproduced, somewhat of a mess. It had no bite to it, took some heavy inspiration from some other songs, and just really came across as, oh boy, if there's this album that is worst of the year, it is Shadowwork by Trapt. That's gonna be for me today, guys. Thank you for watching and listening. Put your picks for the worst album of the year in the comments below. Tell me if I got any wrong in your opinion. Like, share, subscribe. This is Kevin from the MSOD Rocks YouTube channel. Tomorrow we look at the best songs of 2020, and we're gonna go with the hat flip. Hit me in the head, but see ya!